and welcome back. Listen, I may have been gone for a little while, but I've been doing my homework. Here's the time where I admit that I am actually a huge Taylor Swift fan, which I think comes as no surprise to anyone who knows me. And one of my absolute favorite albums is Folklore. That's right. Why am I using this as a microphone? That's not where it is. I feel like some of her later, more singer-songwriter type songs have been misinterpreted a little bit. Or maybe the meaning is not 100% clear, which is totally fine. But I thought I would take this opportunity just to analyze a song that I've heard 1,000 times. And that has made me cry 1,000 times. And that is My Tears, Ricochet. You might see me pull out my iPad, that's just because that's where I wrote all my notes. I wrote a lot, okay? And I thought we would go through it together. Follow along if you're interested in really getting to know what My Tears, Ricochet is about. Also, I would just like to take a quick moment to address something that I see in like the Taylor Swift fandom a lot. And that, my friends, is parasocial relationships. Number one, let's not idolize celebrities. And number two, we don't actually know Taylor Swift. We might think we know her because we've grown up watching her, listening to her, but we don't actually know Taylor Swift. So just let's keep that in mind when we're going through this. That's good shit. If you've ever been in an English class and you've ever had to analyze a poem, for example, you will likely start with the title. Most of the time, that's where English teachers will let you start. You start with the title. In this case, this is Taylor Swift, My Tears, Ricochet, from the album Folklore, Track 5. I do have a little bit of context around Taylor Swift. Like I mentioned, I have been a fan since I was in middle school. So it's been a while.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
So starting with the title, My Tears, Ricochet. What can we gather from this? I know it's just, it's a very small title, but we can actually gather a bunch of information already from the get-go from this analysis. So number one, tears. The word tears, right? Tears are a vulnerable thing. They usually happen when you're sad or hurt in some way. And then a tear is not a hard object. It's the opposite of a bullet, you know? Like, technically speaking, it's not something that can physically hurt you. And then we have ricochet. That word, if English is not your first language, ricochet might be a little weird of a word, which I totally understand. English is not my first language, so let's go through it. Ricochet is when a bullet or a projectile hits and then rebounds off a surface. So imagine this is a bullet. It hits, and then this is the surface, and it rebounds off. That's what ricocheting is. And the thing about ricochets is that not only are they unpredictable, they're also inherently dangerous because you don't know where they're gonna hit. When a bullet ricochets, it can just hit anyone in the vicinity, and it likely doesn't hit the intended target unless you are aiming at the wall, but it likely hurts people around you as you are shooting if a bullet is ricocheting. So from this, we can already tell that this persona or speaker, in this case I'm talking about Taylor, is sad, or she has been hurt in some way. And when our speaker experiences this kind of emotional distress, what happens is that they tend to lash out and hurt those around, even without necessarily intending to. Tears are ricocheting, right? So they're hitting people who are not necessarily the targets of our speaker. So that's the title. We got all of that from the title. So our speaker has been hurt in some way, and they, in turn, have been hurting those around them. We're on the same page? Great. Awesome. Now we get to go into the actual song. So let's get into verse 1. Now, I'm going to read through all of it first, and then we're going to go line by line. It's just a little bit easier to break it up into stanzas or verses, and then break those down into different lines. Verse 1 says, "We gather here, we line up, weeping in a sunlit room, and if I'm on fire, you'll be made of ashes too. Even on my worst day, did I deserve, babe, all the hell you gave me? 'Cause I loved you, I swear I loved you, till my dying day." That's verse 1. And again, because I have been a fan of Taylor for so long, we already have a little bit of context of her talking about this song in general. From Long Pond studio sessions, she says that this song is about karma and greed and how the person you trust the most turns on you and they just know how to hurt you the most.
How somebody could be your best friend and your companion and your most trusted person in your life, and then they could go and become your worst enemy who knows how to hurt you because they were once your most trusted person.
It's the worst betrayal.
Yeah.
And she even mentions a little bit of like when two people get divorced, right? These people who used to love each other in such a deep way, and then suddenly they're broken up. They don't want to know anything about each other. That's some context that we may be able to grab from in our analysis, but again, analysis is very different from person to person. You might disagree with what I'm saying. That's completely fine. It is up to you as long as you're basing yourself on the text. That's like rule number one when it comes to analysis. As long as you're basing yourself on what you're seeing, that's fine. So let's start with the first line, which is we gather here, we line up, weeping in our sunlit room. Our speaker's already building an image in our minds of what is happening at that moment. She is establishing a starting point for the story. In this case, when I hear gathering, weeping, lining up, it's giving funeral imagery immediately for me. Gathering and weeping, we have a bunch of people that are together but aren't crying, they are weeping, which is a step over crying. And we usually weep when we are full of sorrow or when we're mourning. That's when we're usually weeping, when it like takes, our emotion takes over and you're like full on crying to like the highest degree that you can cry. And then we line up, gather, weeping, and line up, to me, like I mentioned before, is giving funeral. It reminds me of when people get in the line at funerals in front of the coffin so that everyone gets to say their last goodbyes to their loved one. And sunlit room to me is very important. It just reminds me of a church. Churches tend to have these incredible like stained glass windows that allow just the perfect amount of sunlight. So that's immediately the image that it's provoking in my head. Everyone's gathered in the church mourning someone, something, okay? The speaker is already setting up the atmosphere, right? We're in a grim space full of sorrow, but it's also being engulfed by something so bright like the sunlight. So it feels a little bit like an oxymoron. When you imagine a funeral, you likely imagine a cloudy sky, rain, or even like a thunderstorm. But in this particular case, it's sunny. So it feels off. It feels too cheery for a funeral. That's line number one. Second line is, and if I'm on fire, you'll be made of ashes too. In the context of funerals, fire plus funeral to me equals cremation. The symbolism of fire can really depend and differ depending on the context that we're talking about. And in this case, it feels destructive. It feels angry. And you might be thinking, how do you know that? Vibes. Honestly, you kind of start to gather certain conclusions based on the context of what you've been reading. At this point, I'm fairly comfortable saying that it feels destructive because the previous line is mentioning funerals, and funerals is not necessarily like a happy thing. And then our speaker says, you'll be made of ashes too, right? There's already a second character involved in this entire thing, besides our speaker. And I will be referring to them throughout the entirety of this analysis as second character, because we don't know who they are. And we might never know who they are. Let's try to figure it out. Again, ashes. Ashes are what's left after cremation. Remember how I mentioned fire plus funerals or death equals cremation? Well, cremation normally leads to ashes. So I feel like we were right on when it came to that cremation analysis. By the speaker saying that the second character will be made of ashes, it just means that if one of them is hurting, the other one will be hurting too. So something has happened between these two characters already from the second line we can tell that something is wrong. I'm actually going to add this third line on with the fourth one because I feel like they go together. Again, you can analyze them separately if you'd like. I am putting them together because that just makes more sense to me. Even on my worst day, did I deserve, babe, all the hell you gave me? I love this line so much. The first thing that calls out to me is the word deserve. So maybe our speaker has done something wrong. And the word deserve just infers that in this case, the punishment doesn't fit the crime. You know, there's a reason why the no cruel or unusual punishment is part of the law in most countries. All the hell you gave me to me already means betrayal. There was some sort of betrayal between these two characters, and it was likely the second character betraying our speaker. The word babe is also important. The second character was someone dear to our speaker. Babe is a term of endearment, usually a romantic partner, but not always. Not always. Hell invokes very powerful imagery. To me, when I think of hell or what we've been taught that hell is, I'm not a religious person, but even I have, heard the word hell one too many times, right? So to me, what goes into my head is a cavern, or punishment, a dungeon, flames, like fire all around. Again, maybe linking that fire to before, right? Maybe that fire from before in the cremation was that same fire from hell. Maybe. I'm just spitting out ideas here. In Christianity, if you're a sinner, you're sent to hell as punishment, implying, again, that you did something wrong. But in this case, the punishment seems cruel. Our speaker probably did do something wrong, but that does not mean that they deserve the punishment that the second character gave our speaker, if that makes sense. I know it would be easier just to say Taylor instead of speaker or persona or whatever it may be. However, it is important to note that even Taylor herself has said that some of the things that she writes, she bases on her real life, but others she doesn't. So the best way to interpret this is as a persona or as a character within a story. Can we use context around the author's life? Absolutely we can. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that this is Taylor speaking yet. And again, it could be a combination of her real life experiences with some fantasy involved in all of it. We don't know. So when you're analyzing, it's just simpler and easier to call the character speaking the speaker or the persona. That's tip number 1 if you have to analyze anything for English class. Next line. 'Cause I loved you. I swear I loved you. Till my dying day. So the first love is actually in past tense, right? It says loved. So something happened between our speaker and the second character that turned love into what the relationship is now. And then we get the word I swear. We usually say I swear when someone doesn't believe us. Our speaker is promising that they did love our second character, even if they don't believe it. Like, I swear I'm not lying. I swear, I promise. We get repetition of loved you. Because I loved you, I swear I loved you. When repetition happens within a poem or a song, it is the author trying to draw attention into that point. In this case, they want us to really understand that they did love this person, the second character. And then till my dying day. So throughout the entirety of our speaker's life, they will continue to swear up and down that their love for that person is real and true for as long as it lasted. Which we don't know yet how long this relationship between these two people lasted. And just really quickly, when I say relationship, I don't necessarily mean in a romantic sense. Relationships can be many different things. It could be romantic, absolutely. And it can also be a friendship or a partnership in some kind of way. So let's keep that in mind, that when I say relationship, that does not necessarily mean romantic. Through the first verse, we're already getting a lot of context. Our speaker feels betrayed in some way by someone that they used to love and trust. And something happened that left our speaker in a place of sorrow and anger. Now let's get into the first chorus. I didn't have it in myself to go with grace, and you're the hero flying around, saving face. And if I'm dead to you, why are you at the wake, cursing my name, wishing I stayed? Look at how my tears ricochet. Let's get into it. First line. When you're analyzing, you want to start off with a general idea and then get into the nitty-gritty of it. However, if you look at it and in general you're like, I actually have no idea what this is, feel free to like break it up first and then come up with a general idea. It's really up to you. Sometimes throughout this analysis, I'm like, actually, I'm not 100% sure what this line means as a whole, so let me just break it down first, and then throughout all those pieces, then we can make something of the general idea of what it is. I hope that made sense. Anyways, oops. That was my phone. Great. Let's start off, in this case, by breaking up our sentence before we get into the general idea of it. I didn't have it in myself to go with grace. I didn't have it in myself. They couldn't help themselves, right? Grace. What do I think when I think of grace? I think something peaceful and polite. And when you don't really know what a word means, you can always put it in the context of a sentence. In this case, grace, I think graceful. She floated down the aisle in such a graceful manner. So peaceful, polite, clean, almost, is what I'm getting from that. And then to go with grace. I didn't have it in myself to go with grace. In this case, our speaker left this situation in an ungraceful way. It's usually women who are constantly being told to be polite or to keep our feelings to ourselves, for the sake of keeping the peace. I'm not saying this is fair. What I am saying is that is what happens to women. So to go with grace usually means leaving on good terms. And that means different things to different people. Because of that, let's go back to the general idea of it. We mentioned before that it's usually women who are being told to keep it to themselves. In this case, our speaker is breaking from this expectation. They are not going with grace. And instead, she is letting her feelings break free. As of now, we don't really know what those feelings or actions are. But again, if they are considered ungraceful, they were likely emotionally raw, instinctual, and or maybe even impulsive. So given all of that, in my mind, this line provokes childish, petulant imagery. Usually it's kids that are able to express their raw, unfiltered emotions in public. I mean, just think of a temper tantrum. If you keep suppressing your emotions, they'll just end up bubbling back up. So that's line 1 of our chorus. So let's go into line 2. And you're gonna love what I got here. I mean, look, this is a preview, but it's Anakin and Obi-Wan. The next is, and you're the hero flying around saving face. So, and is a connective word. In this case, it is connecting to the previous idea. So it's that and this, right? So we have to look back into what we learned from the previous line, but let's first continue to analyze this and then we can go back to the previous line. You're the hero flying around, saving face. So the hero flying around, to me, my immediate thought, the image that it evoked is Superman, which is, fun fact, yet another Taylor Swift song. Who is Superman? Superman is a superhero who can do no wrong in the eyes of the public. And people sure do love a hero. And usually, when someone is fighting the hero, they are the villains, at least in the eyes of the public. So, around, flying around. Let's focus on the word around now for a little bit. Around in this case is going to all kinds of places, seemingly on purpose. It kind of reminds me of when a celebrity gets crisis PR manager and they start this PR campaign in order to do damage control and to save their public image, aka saving face. So let's get into saving face, shall we? Saving face is a very common phrase. It is to avoid humiliation and keep your reputation intact. However, if you are trying to save face, that means you must have done something that could be considered wrong or humiliating. Guys, I said reputation. This is about reputation. Oh my god, this just means that rep TV is coming. It's coming, guys. Now that we've analyzed the rest of it, we can go back to that and that's connecting to the previous idea. Again, in the previous line, our speaker is expressing themselves in a way that can be considered rude, while the second character is now acting like the hero. So that paints the image of our speaker as the villain. So this creates a narrative where people are just more likely to root for the hero. And that in turn leads to isolating our speaker. And isolation and reputation just reminds me of that entire era where Taylor Swift disappeared from the public eye for a while. So maybe that's something to consider for the rest of the analysis if we get another note that we can refer to that. But so far, it's good that we're noting it. Usually, in comics, the villain used to be the hero's best friend. And that's why I put Anakin and Obi-Wan in my notes, because they used to be best friends, you know? You are my brother, Anakin. I loved you. And then Anakin turned evil and became Darth Vader. Do I have to explain that more? I don't know. If you want to see that, you can watch the movies. Anyways, let's get into the next line. The next line is, "And if I am dead to you, why are you at the wake?" So again, the wake. Wake is just bringing back that funeral imagery. Usually, a wake is a gathering of friends and family of the deceased. A wake is traditionally somewhere where those friends and family are there to keep vigil of the body. It's a way for them to pay their final respects to the deceased. But again, the people that go to their wake are usually loved ones of the deceased. So if our speaker is dead to our second character, metaphorically speaking, then there's no reason for them to be at the wake. We have two options, right? Either they regretted cutting off our speaker, or they're still trying to save face. And, you know, these are questions that even our speaker is probably having to ask themselves. Dead to me is a very common phrase that we use. When someone dies, you can't see them anymore. You can't hold them, you can't talk to them, and eventually your life goes on without them. That to me is a very common phrase to say that you've severed yourself from that person. You know, severing any sort of emotional connection that you might have had with them. So, that to me, why are you at the wake? Clearly ended on bad terms. We have the line "and" again. So, let's go back to the previous line and see how that fits with this line. Maybe as part of this campaign to save face, that's why the second character was distancing themselves publicly from our speaker. But then later on, once that speaker is dead, metaphorically, then maybe going to the wake is a way for them to save face, like we mentioned before. So maybe that is what it is. Instead of them feeling regret about how they treated our speaker in some way, maybe instead of that, it really is just that they're trying to save face for the public. Next line. "Cursing my name, wishing I stayed. Look at how my tears ricochet." Cursing could technically mean two different things, right? So let's break it down. The first way to interpret this is using literal curse words. Curse words or bad words are used to insult something or someone. I don't know. What's an example? You know, all that kind of. And then the second thing I think of when I hear cursing is witchcraft. When you curse someone is with the intention of hurting them. Between these two interpretations of curse, I would probably go towards the first option just because we haven't had any indication of magic or witchcraft in the first previous line. I'm just more inclined towards the fact that it's curse words. But it might be a mix of both. Who knows? Wishing I stayed. Wishing. Usually when you wish for something, it's a silent desire. It's just a hidden hope. I feel like this is a bit of an oxymoron. If you're cursing someone, you likely don't like them. In fact, you probably hate them. But wishing that person had stayed just implies that you clearly miss them. This person is all over the place. It's just pick a lane and stick to it. Look at how my tears ricochet. That's a callback to our title, so we can go back to that analysis that we first did of the title of what that means. However, we have a different start. Look at how my tears ricochet. So saying look in this case is important because they're kind of forcing that second character to witness the consequences of their actions. Our second character heard our speaker, and in turn, our speaker heard those around them. Our speaker, in this case, is saying, take a look at what you did. Your actions have consequences, which is a lesson I think many people forget. That was the first chorus. And now we have verse 2. We gather stones, never knowing what they'll mean. Some to throw, some to make a diamond ring. You know I didn't want to have to haunt you, but what a ghostly scene. You wear the same jewels that I gave you as you bury me. Let's get into it. We gather stones, never knowing what they'll mean. The first we seems a little bit more of like a royal we. It could technically also refer to everyone, every single person, right? We all gather stones, never knowing what they'll mean. So gathering stones, what does that mean? This phrase refers to the fact that you are probably preparing for something. So it can be that they're either prepping for a fight, so stones in this case equals ammunition, or they can be gathering resources for a future emergency or that kind of thing. You know, gathering stones. You're gathering these supplies for whatever reason. Never knowing what they'll mean. Never is a very impactful word. It means that it will remain a mystery. Never knowing what they'll mean. The duality of not knowing what they're going to use the stones for. But this question is answered in the next line. Some to throw, some to make a diamond ring. The first thing that I think of when I hear throwing stones, it's actually a phrase from the Bible. I did a little bit when it came to research about, because it is giving a little bit of religious imagery. Again, with that church from the beginning. Because of that, I did some investigating about the Bible and if there was any other references to stones. Because I'm not a religious person, I had to look it up. So if this is wrong, I apologize. But in the Bible, it says, those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. What does this mean? It basically means that you shouldn't criticize people for qualities that you have as well. So basically, don't be a hypocrite. If you throw a rock in a glass house, it will shatter. Some to throw, some to make a diamond ring. Diamond ring. Even if we don't really think about it very often, diamonds are just shiny rocks at the end of the day. And even though the idea of diamonds has been changing, especially in the last decade or so, we still associate diamonds with engagements and marriage. So let's mix this line and the previous line and make a cohesive argument as to what this means. Our two characters are entering the situation gathering stones. These two characters are all or nothing, right? So they're either going to hurt each other with these stones or they're going to get married. There's no in between for them. The next line is, you know I didn't want to have to haunt you, but what a ghostly scene. When you're being haunted, you are constantly being followed by the ghost or the memory of something or someone. You know I didn't want to have to haunt you, but what a ghostly scene. Ghostly, ghosts. This is following the themes of what we've seen before, funerals and death. Ghosts are created when a spirit can't rest in peace. Usually they have some sort of unfinished business in life, or they just met a gruesome end. So when you're being haunted, you're constantly being followed by the ghost of something or someone. And when speaking about Taylor's life in particular, I thought about the fact that, for better or worse, she's an incredibly famous person. And if our speaker and the second character's relationship was public, after a separation, Taylor's presence would hang over their heads forever or loom over them, almost haunting them. So not necessarily an actual real ghost, but just the presence or just, Taylor and what Taylor represents in our world. Let's try to get back into the general idea of this line. After our second character metaphorically kills our speaker's presence, or ghost, if you will, is looming or haunting over our second character, whether our speaker wants to or not. Next, line. You wear the same jewels that I gave you as you bury me. You, probably talking about the second speaker. You wear the same jewels that I gave you. Jewels is probably, in this case, a mix of metaphorical and literal, like the diamond that was previously mentioned, and maybe other kind of jewels that our speaker gave the second character. You normally give gifts to your loved ones. This just further reinforces the fact that they did care for each other at one point. And in the metaphorical way, jewels can probably be symbolically the memories that they shared. And that's why I feel like it's more of a combination of both. And then as you bury me. So to bury someone, yet another common phrase. Taylor loves using idioms and phrases. And this is not just true for this song, but a lot of her songs, if you want to go back to them. To bury someone, it is metaphorically. You keep throwing dirt on the person until that person is driven fully underground. Until that person is forgotten or hated into oblivion. Which again reminds me of the time before Reputation where Taylor hid from the world. And then in a literal way, when you bury someone, it is part of the grieving process. People do this in order to help them cope with the loss. Actually, when I hear this line, you wear the same jewels that I gave you as you bury me, it reminds me of the, what's the name? For Midnight's, oh crap. I'm just gonna put the images up here. It's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me. That music video where Taylor's future children are, reading the will, and her daughter is literally wearing one of her old dresses, and they're just fighting over who gets what after Taylor's death. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
And Kimber, you're literally wearing her clothes right now.
No, I'm not.
That's from the Fearless Tour 2009.
It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but, recalling that type of thing can help you further analyze stuff. So sometimes the first thing that comes to your mind, you write it down and you're like, oh, that reminds me of this. And then you finish analyzing, you're like, actually, this had nothing to do with what this is. That's totally fine. You can go back and erase that previous analysis. And then we get to the second chorus. And you might be thinking, why would we analyze the chorus again? Well, there is one line that changes. In this case, the chorus goes as follows. I didn't have it in myself to go with grace. 'Cause when I'd fight, you used to tell me I was brave. That's the line that changes. And if I'm dead to you, why are you at the wake? Cursing my name, wishing I stayed. Look at how my tears ricochet. Most of the chorus repeats. And repetition is an important literary device. Repetition is imperative to emphasize certain themes or ideas, and it has a direct impact in the overall meaning of the piece. Taylor chose to emphasize this, and therefore it's important. Changing just one line from the chorus draws the focus to it. When our speaker would get into trouble, the second character would praise the rude behavior or the rude characteristics, but the line says used to. So we can infer that those characteristics that they would praise, they now dislike. The second character keeps changing their mind over and over and over and over again, which is probably as confusing for us as it is for our speaker. And then we get the bridge. Taylor is famous for her bridges. I want us to focus, lock in for the bridge for the song. And I can go anywhere I want, just not home. And you can name for my heart, go for blood, but you would still miss me in your bones. And I still talk to you when I'm screaming at the sky. And when you can't sleep at night, you hear my stolen lullabies. And listen, I was at the Eras Tour here in Mexico City, and it was incredible. I had a great time. Bridges are where Taylor truly excels in her writing. And I can go anywhere I want, just not home. We're gonna get a little bit technical here. When it comes to poetry, there's this thing called volta. And if you speak Spanish or any other Latin-based languages, that word probably sounds familiar. It sounds like vuelta or turn. And that's exactly what this is. It's the turning point of the piece. It can either introduce a new idea or twist, or it can expand on the previous themes. And this bridge is the volta of the song, at least in my opinion. The first line, and I can go anywhere I want, just not home. So continuing with the death imagery, in this case, the Volta is just locking into that theme. If you believe in the afterlife, you probably believe that when you die, your spirit leaves your terrestrial body. And in spirit form, you're free to roam wherever you like. This is when knowing a little bit of the author's context is important for analyzing. Taylor is an incredibly privileged individual. That's a fact. She can literally go anywhere she'd like at any time. She has the money and the resources to do so. But the real question here is, can she go anywhere? I mean, can she physically? Yes, absolutely. But in this line, it says, just not home. Going back to the ghost idea a little bit, a ghost can roam freely, but at the end of the day, they will never be able to return to their previous life, to their body and their literal and metaphorical home. So home here isn't an actual place. It's more of a feeling or a person. This isn't me just talking out of my ass. This is, based on the previous stanzas. Given the context of the rest of the song, we can infer that the second character felt like home to her speaker, which to me means that the bond that they shared was that strong. Because when you say that something feels like home, you don't say that lightheartedly. It carries a lot of weight. They provide a sense of comfort and familiarity. I hate that word. And belonging that isn't found in every friendship. So our speaker is now free of their bonds to this person, but also misses a time where things used to be good between them. At least that's what I'm feeling in this line. Next, you can aim for my heart, go for blood. Aiming for the heart. When you're hunting, it's considered a humane way to kill, which again, feels like an oxymoron, but stay with me.
What are you gonna do with that when you kill it?
Damn you, Gail!
You're aiming for the vital organs so that the kill will be quick. Most times, the animals literally won't even know what hit them. And it's intended to prevent like a long, drawn-out death, preventing the animal's suffering. So go for blood. This phrase likely comes from out for blood. It means that you're wanting to injure or harm someone, usually in a cruel way. And you can aim for my heart, go for blood. It seems that our speaker is letting our second character know that if they choose to kill, metaphorically, our speaker, whether in a quick and humane way or in a long, drawn-out way, it really won't matter. And we find out why in the next line. You can aim for my heart, go for blood, but you would still miss me in your bones. It connected to the previous idea. In a different way, we'll get into it. Even if our second character decided to kill, aka cut off our speaker from their life, they would still continue to miss them. In your bones comes from the idiom, I feel it in my bones. It usually means that you are feeling something even when it defies logic. Like something's wrong, I feel it in my bones. There might not be an actual physical reason why something feels wrong to you. It might just be like your gut feeling. Almost. In this case, is used to say that our second character is going to miss our speaker dearly, even if it defies logic, even if it is them that try to cut off our speaker. It kind of feels like they both miss each other, but something happened that created a massive rift between these two, and we still don't know what that is. The next line is, and I still talk to you when I'm screaming at the sky. And when I'm screaming at the sky is in parenthesis. As the reader, we were under the impression that these two were no longer under speaking terms. So this comes as a bit of a shock to you. How can they still talk if they cut off all communication with each other? When I'm screaming at the sky, again in parenthesis. So they're not having a literal conversation with the second speaker, but rather they're screaming at the sky. When you go through the ending of a relationship, a lot of things are left unsaid. You don't really get closure. In order to achieve that closure, you sometimes have to have conversations with yourself or with the void in order to process your feelings and eventually just move on. Closure. Yet another Taylor Swift song. So, coincidence? I think not. Screaming. So It's not even talking to the sky, it's screaming at the sky. So word choice, again, incredibly important. Screaming isn't really associated with something positive. So if our speaker is screaming, it's likely that they were the wronged party in this case. Maybe that's just me, maybe I'm biased. And when you can't sleep at night, again in parentheses, you hear my stolen lullabies. Our second character, whoever they may be, is not able to sleep or rest. Something is keeping them up at night. There are many possible reasons for this, but based on the parts of the song we've already analyzed, it's likely that the situation with our speaker is eating at them. And stolen lullabies. Let's use Taylor's life as context for the song, because I feel this is important. This to me is very obviously about her old record label selling her masters to Scooter Braun without even letting her buy them herself. So now her life's work is in the hands of someone that has done her emotional harm before. You know, her stolen lullabies are those songs that she couldn't get back. And I'm sure that to her, it felt like they were stolen from under her. So lullabies, what is a lullaby? Immediately, when babies can't sleep, lullabies are songs. A well-known phrase is like lull them back to sleep. That is because you're probably singing at the baby, rocking them, and you're lulling them back to sleep. So in order for the second character to be able to sleep at night, they put on Taylor's old songs. Maybe it's in order to feel close to her again, or maybe to just remind our second character of a time where they used to care for each other. I definitely think that that line is very much about the Scooter Braun situation and Scott Borchetta, who was her old record label CEO, I think. So then we get to the last chorus, aka our last stanza. I didn't have it in myself to go with grace, and so the battleships will sink beneath the waves. You had to kill me, but it killed you just the same. Cursing my name, wishing I stayed, you turned into your worst fears, and you're tossing up blame, drunk on this pain, crossing out the good years. And you're cursing my name, wishing I stayed. Look at how my tears ricochet. My camera overheated. So let's try this again, shall we? Let's break down the first, second, and third chorus. So from the first to second chorus, only one line changes, which is the second line. Because when I fight, you used to tell me I was brave. And then in the last chorus, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines are different or have been added. So the first and second chorus are 5 lines each, while the last chorus is composed of 9 lines. I'm just going to be analyzing those different lines, and I'm not going to get into all the other ones because we've already discussed them before. So let's start off with the first line that is different, and that is, and so the battleships will sink beneath the waves. To me, this is giving war imagery. And not just any war. It's not just ships, it's battleships, which I was told by my brother are not regular ships. They are a very specific type of ship. So I didn't know that. Battleships are ready for war. War is violent. It's raw. And for whatever reason, it's already provoking an image in my mind of shipwrecks at the bottom of the ocean. So whatever happened between them felt like an all-out war. I actually discussed this line with my brother because he's very into war history for whatever reason, and he pointed out something that I probably wouldn't have been able to point out, or at least not if it was up to me. But when war happens on land, there will always be remnants of that battle, evidence of it, even centuries later. But with battles in the ocean, forget about it. You could be on top of a place where thousands have died and you would never know it. And he said this line that is so poetic, especially for my brother. But he said, the earth holds memories, but the ocean cleanses you. The next line is, you turn into your worst fears. So the fact that our speaker knows what the second character's worst fear is, that means that at one point they probably shared that with each other. I'm thinking of like when we were younger, right? We used to trust our friends and we would tell them like our hopes and dreams for the future, but also our worst fears. And so now our speaker is seeing our second character from a distance becoming what they hate it in the first place. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. In your quest to avoid that future, you are provoking that future. It reminds me a little bit of Cersei from Game of Thrones, and the fact that she was giving a prophecy and she did everything in her power to try to avoid it, and her doing all of that is what provoked the prophecy in the first place. I'm going to mention another phrase that I've mentioned before in my other videos, but this is from Batman The Dark Knight, and it's you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I feel like the second character is kind of doing that a little bit. You turn into your worst fears. Our second character, for whatever reason, in trying to avoid becoming what they feared, ended up becoming what they feared. I hope that made sense. The next line is, and you're tossing out blame, drunk on this pain. So tossing out blame reminds me of our speaker's tears. My tears, Ricochet, tossing out blame. In a way, they're both hating people that may not deserve it. Tossing out also, at least to me, lets me know that the second character is blaming everyone except for themselves. Essentially, avoiding responsibility for their actions. A ricochet bullet can hit the person who sent it, right? If you shoot it and it ricochets, it can hit you. However, when you're tossing out blame, that's different. It's not bouncing off. You're giving it directly to other people. It never hits you. So that's, I think, the main difference between what our speaker is going through and what our second character is going through. Drunk on pain is yet another phrase or idiom. It just means that someone is experiencing suffering, emotional or otherwise, to the point where they feel numb, similar to the effects that alcohol gives you. Alcohol is a depressant drug. If you're feeling sad or depressed, it's just going to make you feel more sad and more depressed. Keep that in mind. Drink responsibly. Our speaker is letting them know that the pain that causes this numb feeling that they're getting is their own fault at the end of the day. And then we get to one of the final lines, crossing out the good years. To me, crossing out just adds on to the "you're dead to me" phrase from before. You know, crossing out the good years means that our second character has chosen to believe that the years that they spent next to our speaker don't mean anything. They no longer count. It's almost like they never happened. And the good years, we finally get a little bit of context of how long they've actually known each other. In this case, years. So they have history going back years. And this is, again, our speaker reminding us that their relationship used to be good. And then the last line of the entire song is, look at how my tears ricochet, which I know we discussed before, but the fact that it's the last line gives it more importance, in my opinion. It just drives the point home. You're trying to avoid responsibility, but look, this is what you have done. And that's my tears ricochet. So now that we've gone through all of it, what does this song mean? I mean, at the end of the day, this feels like our character has gone through some sort of falling out with the second character. And to be fair, I think from what I understood of the song, it feels like that second character could be a mix of different people in Taylor's life. It could be a mix of friendships and relationships, and even professional relationships, like with Scott Bruschetta. So it might be a combination of a bunch of things that led her to this feeling. Overall, the main themes are death and betrayal, in a way. I think this is probably one of Taylor's most beautiful songs. I also think that people don't give Taylor enough credit for her latest album, The Tortured Poets Department. I feel like people are like, oh my god, it's so cringe. Some lines may be cringe, but I think overall, lyrically, it's probably one of her best albums yet. You might disagree with me, feel free to do so, but that's my opinion. I hope you guys liked this analysis. And if you want more videos like this, if you want me to analyze another song, feel free to drop it in the comments. And that's it for me. Thank you. Bye! You want to come say hi? Bye-bye! Okay. Bye!